Off the northern coast of Norway, deep within the Arctic Circle, a black helicopter emblazoned with zinc cut through the silent snow. Roderick Zinco stared out the window, his eyes gleaming with obsession as he spotted an isolated old castle. "There it is. Right there. I knew it," he muttered triumphantly. The stunned pilot could only reply, "I'll be damned." Zinco ordered an immediate landing, despite the pilot's warning that there shouldn't be any buildings in this middle-of-nowhere wasteland. Before disembarking, Zinco gave stern instructions. "If I'm not back in 1 hour, you lift off and call MY London office. Ask for Mr. Pope. Tell him what we found, and he'll give you instructions. Speak to no one but Mr. Pope. You understand?" Zinco trudged through the blizzard toward the castle entrance, which looked like a ruin. Inside, he found the gruesome remains of Nazi glory. Human skulls were scattered about, and glass lay shattered. As he ventured deeper, his eyes fell upon an ancient emblem, a dragon coiled around a swastika. In the corner of the room, skeletons of Nazi soldiers still wore their full uniforms. "It's true," he whispered, touching the control panel of an old machine with gloves bearing his company's brand. Suddenly, the floor mechanism shifted, and Zinco plummeted into the subterranean darkness. He gasped in horror at the sight before him. "Oh my God!" he hissed. In the gloom, a spotlight flared to life, and a booming voice commanded, "Stay where you are." "Who are you? How did you find this place?" Zinco fell, his glasses slipping off as a giant figure emerged from the shadows. Leopold, operating a massive mechanical war machine with a glowing weapon muzzle, threatened him. "Speak quickly. I am aching to destroy you." However, Ilse Horpstein appeared alongside the gas-masked Karl Ruprecht Cronin. Ilse initially attempted a polite tone before finally commanding, "Kill him." In a panic, Zinco screamed, No. Listen to me, please. A man sent me. The man. I saw him. It was a master." At the mention of the master, Ilse froze and demanded an immediate explanation. Zinco recounted his meeting a week ago on a private island in the Caribbean with a mysterious figure in monk's robes, Rasputin. "Roderick Zinco, I have come to offer you something," Rasputin had said then. Though Zinco felt he already had everything, Rasputin offered him a purpose in life and traced the words Ragna Rok into the beach sand. From that moment, Zinco knew Rasputin was the master. He now knelt, surrendering his entire fortune. "I'm here to give you everything I have, money, people, equipment, property. Everything I have is for you." Rasputin welcomed him into the plan for the end of the world. 1 year later in Soho, New York, a wax museum owned by Hans Ubler stood with a sign reading "Open by appointment only." Inside, rows of demonic wax figures and human skeletons created a chilling atmosphere. A bloody tragedy unfolded within the museum. Hans Ubler, whose real name was Howard Steinman, was brutally shot dead. Ilse Horpstein stood coldly as her men riddled the old man with bullets. Ubler managed to cry out "Ilse" before his body collapsed, drenched in blood, in front of the wax statue of the vampire nobleman Vladimir Giurescu. At B.P.R.D headquarters in Fairfield, Tom Manning led a briefing in front of a projection screen displaying a portrait of Vladimir Giurescu. "Ladies and gentlemen, the only known portrait of Vladimir Giurescu," Tom began before handing over control to Professor Kate Corrigan. Kate explained Giurescu's history as a Napoleonic-era officer dubbed Giurescu the Devil by the Emperor himself. Hellboy, Abe Sapien, Liz Sherman, and other agents listened intently. Kate detailed Giurescu's extraordinary regenerative abilities, noting that he always returned fully restored to youth and vigor whenever he was gravely wounded. In 1944, Ilse Horpstein led a Nazi delegation to recruit him for Project Vampire Stim, but Hitler later ordered the arrest and execution of the entire Giurescu family. Although historical records stated he had been burned, Kate doubted the vampire's permanent death. Tom Manning continued, noting that Hans Ubler, the deceased wax museum owner, once ran a chamber of horrors for Himmler's inner circle and was involved in Project Ragna Rok. Most chillingly, the police found the Ragna Rok symbol drawn in Ubler's blood on the museum floor that morning. Hellboy stared at the image with a grim expression. The investigation revealed that a large crate labeled Giurescu, lot number 666, had gone missing from the museum. Abe Sapien noted that psychics sensed the presence of a man in a Napoleonic uniform in that storage room. The B.P.R.D team suspected someone had stolen Giurescu's body to resurrect him at Castle Giurescu during tomorrow night's full moon. Tom split the team into 3 groups to check 3 potential locations in Romania. Hellboy, I'm afraid you have to go solo, Tom said, prompting a protest from Abe. Clark was paired with Abe Sapien, while Bud Waller and Liz Sherman were assigned to work with a new agent, Sidney Leach.
Geo, Tom ordered firmly.
Before departing, Hellboy spoke briefly with Liz, who was returning to duty after a leave of absence. On the other side, Kate Corrigan warned Hellboy that the Giurescu case might be real and dangerous. However, Hellboy remained skeptical, dismissing the trip as a wild goose chase. As he walked away, he joked, "Paprika chicken, baby." In Romania, an eagle perched on the branch of an old tree as twilight enveloped the ancient castle. Inside a ruined room, Ilse Horpstein stood before a coffin, mourning Hitler's past betrayal. "He is beyond our revenge now, my love, but the world will pay. The world will bleed for it,"
she whispered vengefully.
Ilse ordered the Nazi soldiers to carry the coffin to the basement. Meanwhile, in Norway, Roderick Zinko and Leopold monitored Ilse's movements through technical screens. Zinko grew anxious that Ilse was moving too quickly, but Leopold was impatient to begin their operation. They discussed Giurescu's utility. Zinko viewed him as a valuable tool, but Leopold was skeptical, seeing the vampire as an uncontrollable force. In their laboratory, rows of mechanical bodies in glowing green tanks were being prepared. Zinko placed more faith in an army of our own manufacture than in ancient supernatural power. Aboard the jet to Romania, Abe Sapien tried to engage Hellboy in conversation about the Nazi involvement and Project Ragna Rok. Hellboy refused to be bothered, stating he preferred to know nothing. In the back seat, Liz challenged Hellboy to a $100 bet that they wouldn't find anything. The B.P.R.D pilot then announced, 5 minutes to target number 1.
Hellboy, suit up.
Technician Lloyd helped strap a jetpack onto Hellboy's back. "Geez, Lloyd, I hate these goddamn things," Hellboy complained. Lloyd assured him it was the latest improved model. Shortly after, the cargo doors opened. "Target up. Bombs away," the pilot shouted as Hellboy leaped out into the dark of night. Hellboy plummeted from the Romanian sky, falling upside down. While trying to control his jetpack, which kept emitting suspicious mechanical clicking sounds, he cursed, "New and improved, MYASS." A violent explosion occurred mid-air as the jetpack malfunctioned. Hellboy cried out in surprise as fire and black smoke billowed, destroying his flight gear MID flight. A long trail of smoke was visible in the sky above the Romanian castle. On the castle balcony, Ilse grew impatient waiting for her men. She ordered a Nazi soldier to check below, but the soldier was terrified and refused.
Her command, "Not going. You dog."
Ilse screamed in a rage, ordering the soldier to kneel and beg for mercy. However, her fury was interrupted by a thunderous crash as the castle ceiling collapsed. Hellboy's massive stone hands smashed through the roof, showering them with stone debris in a very
rough landing.
Thick black smoke still billowed from the ruins of the castle roof in Romania as Ilse Horpstein glared down at the red figure sprawled among the debris. "Hellboy. The American ghost hunter, Hellboy. Some sort of trained circus monkey, I think," Ilse mocked with a deadly, cold tone. Without hesitation, she issued the execution order to her men. "Shoot him." Hellboy began to haul himself to his feet, terrifying the Nazi soldier on guard duty. "Nazi!" The soldier screamed in a panic before leaping backward and falling from the castle heights, shrieking "NAAA" all the way down. Witnessing such cowardice, Ilse barked in a rage, "Back here and shoot him." She then turned to the Unmensch and commanded, "Unmensch, fetch me the monkey's tail." Obediently, the giant replied, "Jawol." Hellboy, now alert and defiant, challenged, "Come and get it, you
Nazi son of a." The fight erupted instantly. The Unmensch launched his cybernetic arm, which was connected to a long chain. J.A.
Zirkus. Zirkus AFFE. The Unmensch cried out as he successfully looped the chain around Hellboy's neck. Hellboy choked and jerked violently as the chain tightened, while the Unmensch continued to laugh, mocking his opponent
as a circus monkey.
However, Hellboy was no easy mark. He managed to grab the chain and slammed his massive stone fist into the Unmensch's face repeatedly. "See? Hurts, doesn't it?"
Hellboy growled.
While pinning the Unmensch down, he pointed toward Ilse.
"And you, Ilse Horpstein.
When I'm done with this guy, you and I are gonna talk." Ilse responded calmly, "Ridiculous APE." With one powerful slam, Hellboy smashed through the castle floor, sending the Unmensch plummeting in to the darkness below. The story shifts to a flashback on Ptarmigan Island, December 23, 1944. General von Krupp stared cynically at a row of ancient stone towers. "This bleak place seems remarkably unchanged for a miracle to have occurred here," he sneered. Rasputin, standing in his black robes, countered sharply. "Spare me your sarcasm, von Krupp." The general reminded him that Hitler would not tolerate failure in the quest for the Reich's victory. Rasputin stated with absolute conviction, "I have set in motion events which cannot now be reversed or undone. I promised Herr Hitler a Myra, CLE. I have made one." Ilse Horpstein knelt solemnly before Rasputin. "Child, has your faith revealed to you the true name of your master?" Rasputin asked. Ilse answered with a single name, Rasputin. This was the sorcerer officially declared dead in 1916, yet he now stood tall, promising a new world. Rasputin declared that Ilse, Cronin, and Kurtz would be the cornerstones of his church. He then prophesied the arrival of a child born of fire who would serve as the messenger for his new age. Rasputin warned that Nazi power would soon collapse and that Hitler would be dead within 5 months. He ordered them to retreat to a secret location in the north. Ilse briefly objected, wanting to bring Vladimir Giurescu, but Rasputin revealed that Giurescu had been executed at Dachau 6 days prior. Returning to the present in Romania, a grieving Ilse was startled by the appearance of Rasputin's spiritual manifestation. "Ilse, do not torture yourself for the vampire," Rasputin whispered. He invited Ilse to walk with him toward the sunlight. As they descended the castle stairs, Rasputin promised Ilse that she would see Giurescu young and strong once more. Ilse asked if the master had truly died. Rasputin confirmed it, recounting how his body had been pierced by an amphibian's harpoon, burned by the fiery power of a young girl, Liz Sherman, and his bones scattered by the one who was meant to be his servant, Hellboy. His soul then wandered beyond the earthly dimension toward the pit, the prison hole of the dragon. In the dark depths of space, a horrific entity known as the Ogdru Jahad appeared, the 7-headed dragon bound within a crystal prizo. Ancient narratives warned of the beast Jahad, who sought to return the world to chaos. In an ancient temple, an old priest read from a scroll with a trembling voice, "Anung Jahad, the enemy, he who is 7 but also 1. Anu protect us from him. Protect us from his evil power." Back at the castle ruins, Hellboy regained consciousness among the rubble. "Ah, stupid bastard. OH, he grumbled, clutching his head. He spotted the unmentioned severed cybernetic arm lying nearby. "Now, where's that big Nazi?" he muttered, trying to gather his wits. Hellboy noted the trail of fluid leaking from the mechanical arm, certain that the unmensch couldn't have gone far. Meanwhile, in the village below the castle, Papa stared anxiously out the window. His daughter urged him to eat, but Papa seemed terrified. "He's come back," Papa whispered, referring to something horrific from tea. He passed. Papa ordered his daughter to close all the windows and pray tonight. He insisted that the children be taken to Bucharest tomorrow morning and never return. "Too late for me, child. Too late," he hissed in despair. Inside the castle, Hellboy walked past a dust-covered statue of a mounted knight, wondering how much blood had been spilled in tea. His place. In a darkened room, Hellboy found a skeletal figure crouching beside a corpse, holding a candelabra. "Hello," the creature greeted. Hellboy immediately prepared to attack. "Kiss your ass good BY, freak." But the skeletal figure calmly replied, "No, youngster. You don't want me. It's the boy you want." "The boy?" "Yes." When Hellboy asked about Vladimir Giurescu, the creature agreed to lead the way. The skeletal figure gestured to a gallery of portraits of Giurescu's past women, Voika, Irina, Caroline, Mary, Catherine, and little Anna. He lamented that they were all gone, taken to Germany by Ilse Horpstein. "No good Nazi bitch," the creature cursed. He claimed he had warned Giurescu not to trust Ilse, who was fond of Germany's modern world. Hellboy agreed that Nazis were not to be trusted. The skeletal figure then told the story of her, whom he had saved from Greek fishermen. The fisherman had found a woman, withered and hard as wood, inside a cave and intended to burn her, but the skeletal figure bought her instead. He brought her to the castle and bathed her in bull's blood, milk, honey, and oil until her body became Zybel once more. The creature explained that this mysterious woman, Lamia, had existed since the time of Atlantis and was the secret queen of hundreds of kingdoms. He handed an ancient book to Hellboy. The skeletal figure then spoke of his son, Vladimir, who had drowned beneath the ice after falling from his horse.
So many years ago,
I brought him to her. I sacrificed all the dogs, then all the servants, and after 3 days, she gave him back to me, the skeletal figure recalled.
Vladimir was now his son and Lamia's son as well.
He warned Hellboy that he was already too late, for the women of Thessaly had gathered as the moon rose. Impatient, Hellboy demanded again, "Where is Vladimir Giurescu?" Suddenly, the skeletal figure plunged a knife into Hellboy's back, screaming, "Too late." In pain, Hellboy immediately retaliated with a heavy blow that shattered the creature's skull.
"I deserve that for feeling sorry for your wrinkled OL, but
won't happen again,"
Hellboy shouted.
Even with its head destroyed, the remnants of the creature's energy managed to whisper one last time. Too late. Hellboy remembered the mention of a moon door.
He found a stone door carved with the face of a weeping moon.
As he pushed the door, it groaned open, revealing a massive chamber with a roof open to
the moonlit night sky.
In the center of the room, a wooden coffin sat upon a stone altar decorated with decapitated Nazi skulls. Too easy, Hellboy muttered suspiciously. Suddenly, dozens of giant crows landed and surrounded him from all sides. The birds were no ordinary crows. They possessed pale, ghastly female faces. Too late, one of them whispered. Hellboy drew his massive revolver as he realized their identity. Women of Thessaly.
Damn.
I knew that sounded familiar. The supernatural hags now stood ready to
pounce on the ghost hunter.
In the dead of night at Castle Giurescu, Romania, Hellboy was locked in a chaotic battle. According to Greek legend, the Witches of Thessaly were sorceresses capable of drawing down the moon and shifting their forms into monsters or carrion birds. Now, a swarm of giant crows with pale, feminine faces attacked Hellboy viciously. A volley of gunfire rang out as Hellboy peppered them with his oversized pistol. Get the hell off me! Hellboy barked, trying to shake off the shock.
RP talons tearing at his body.
Hellboy swung his stone fist with fury, refusing to become prey for these hags. I'm not kidding. I will not be food for bird women, he shouted. He tried once more to shoot one of the flying witches. You too, lady. Blow! But as he pulled the trigger, there was only a disappointing mechanical click. The zinc brand weapon issued to the B.P.R.D agent had malfunctioned. Now what's wrong with this dumb thing?
Brand new. Lots of bullets.
So what's the...
He muttered in frustration.
Suddenly, the weapon exploded in his hand with a deafening boom, shattering its own barrel and catching Hellboy off guard.
Guh. Hellboy tossed the wreckage of his gun aside in disgust. That's it. That's it. No more guns.
No more goddamn machines, he grumbled.
He then spotted an ancient sword lying among the ruins. What I need. Something with no moving parts. Perfect, he exclaimed, drawing the blade.
At that same moment, Hecate's voice echoed, invoking the goddess of darkness. Hellish, heavenly, and earthly Hecate, goddess of crossroads, witch queen, gorgon-eyed terrible dark one. Thirsty for blood and the terror of mortal men. Gorgo, Mormo, moon of 1,000 forms. Suddenly, the coffin atop the altar burst open, and the resurrected Vladimir Giurescu began to crawl out.
Hellboy readied his sword. Showtime.
Giurescu rose in a hideous undead form while Hecate's voice continued to praise the moon. Blessed moon. Mother. Goddess. See how Giurescu becomes himself again. Hecate commanded the vampire to kill Hellboy, declaring that Giurescu was now more than human, a god who could not die by fire. Hellboy interrupted her rudely. Shut up. When I do you'll be done. Insulted, Giurescu hissed back. Insolent beast.
Troglodyte.
Hellboy casually mocked him. Big talk for a guy with no pants. Hecate warned Hellboy to leave immediately or stay and face a suffering that would make the castle walls shake with his screams. Undeterred, Hellboy lunged into the
Ray.
A giant witch bird swooped in from behind, but Hellboy deftly drove his sword into the creature's neck. Who's screaming now, you vampire son of he taunted. However, the creature's grip was so powerful that Hellboy was hoisted high into the air, dangling from the sword embedded in the witch's body. Hellboy managed to break free and landed on a castle balcony, while Giurescu's body seemed to fall in another direction. Keep dreaming, Giurescu. You're getting away? I think not. Hellboy muttered, leaping through a shattered window. He landed in an ancient graveyard with a heavy thud. Standing tall, he admired his opponent's persistence.
Geez. Got to give you credit for
trying. Hellboy cornered Giurescu, who lay helpless on a stone altar with a sword piercing his chest. Why don't you make it easy on yourself?
See? I told you.
When I do you're done, Hellboy said with finality.
He demanded the vampire surrender. You're finished. Give up.
What do you say we finish this? Okay. Giurescu could only groan weakly as death reached for him.
Once more.
Hellboy stepped toward Giurescu's body, which was beginning to sink into a pool of black water.
Oh, come on.
You're a slippery one. But I've got... His sentence was cut short when hundreds of venomous snakes suddenly erupted from the vampire's body. Startled, Hellboy tried to fend off the reptilian assault. In an instant, Giurescu's body vanished, dissolving into a swarm of snakes that disappeared into the dark water.
Hellboy could only stare blankly at the now still P.O. Damn.
In the silence, Hecate's voice called out once more for her son to rise and seek vengeance.
Save your poor son. Quicken me one last time.
That I might taste blood again. Have revenge. My son, the dark goddess whispered. Hecate's giant yellow eyes glared with hatred, swearing that anyone who threatened her child would be her enemy. Meanwhile, beneath the Romanian night sky, the spirit manifestation of Rasputin spoke to Ilse Horpstein about the nature of the world. Ilse, consider this sky. As a dead man I have lived in it, seen through it. I have seen the clockworks that turn these worlds, and believe me, the music of the spheres is chaos. Rasputin explained that the embodiment of that chaos was the dragon,
Ogdru Jahad.
Rasputin recounted his past as a crude Siberian peasant, full of sin and hungering for answers from a silent god.
What is this power inside me? Where does it come from?
Whom does it serve? He recalled. In his despair, he had met Baba Yaga, the great witch who flew in a mortar. Baba Yaga explained that fate had chosen him as an agent of change. Rasputin surrendered half his soul to the witch, who then hid it within the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil, so that his spirit would
always be safe.
Rasputin remembered how he had infiltrated the Russian royal family, waiting for the sign to begin the new millennium. However, on December 16, 1916, he was shot from behind by Felix Yusupov and thrown into the frozen Neva River. It was at the bottom of that river that he met the dragon and found his life's purpose. I, Grigori Efimovich Rasputin, was reborn in chaos, he proclaimed.
He then offered Ilse the same opportunity. Ilse Horpstein, would you be reborn?
Would you become the destroyer of mankind? With total devotion, Ilse replied, I will. Yes, please. Rasputin promised that when the sun rose again, Ilse would be changed forever. The light of dawn illuminated the ruins of Castle Chage, hundreds of miles from Hellboy's location. Liz Sherman sat pensively, smoking a cigarette, accompanied by the new agent, Sidney Leach. Sidney tried to start a conversation about why Liz had returned to the B.P.R.D. after the horrific Cavendish Hall incident. Liz revealed her dark past, how her pyrokinesis first manifested when she was 11. I killed 32 people that day, including my entire family, she admitted coldly. For her, the bureau was the only place she had left. Where else am I going to go? Suddenly, Bud Waller called out to them from within the ruins. Sidney Leach, who possessed the ability of a human metal detector, sensed a hidden mechanism behind a wall covered in alchemical symbols.
Gears. Hinges.
It's a door, all right, Sidney said confidently. Touching the stone wall, he felt the mechanical vibrations from within. The sound of a groaning stone door echoed as Sidney successfully activated the secret lever. The three of them stepped into a room that had been sealed for hundreds of years.
Ooh.
Bad air, Sidney complained, smelling the pungent, musty odor. They discovered a stunning ancient alchemist's laboratory, complete with glassware and mystic symbols. In the center of the room, their eyes were drawn to a massive figure lying rigid on a wooden table. You like that? You're gonna love this, Sidney said, pointing toward the artificial create. Sidney explained that it was a homunculus, an artificial human created from a mixture of blood, herbs, and the incubation of horse dung. This creature was far larger than any homunculus he had ever seen. Bud began examining the ancient journals nearby, while Liz stood frozen, staring at a strange hole in the creature's chest. Feels like skin, but it's cold, Liz murmured. Without thinking, Liz moved her hand toward the hole in the homunculus's chest. Don't touch that. Bud shouted in warning, but it was too late. Instantly, Lizzie's pyrokinesis was sucked into the homunculus's body.
Miss Sherman.
Liz, stop.
Sydney screamed in panic. Liz's body emitted a bright light as her power was drained away.
Can't, Liz hissed, unable to pull her hand away. Sydney tried to pull Liz back, but he was thrown by a massive wave of energy. Bud immediately drew his pistol and aimed at the creature. Do it, he ordered before firing a thunderbolt.
Us shot.
The gunshot did not stop the homunculus. The creature rose with glowing yellow eyes and grabbed Sydney Leach by the neck with one hand. A sickening crack of bone rang out as the homunculus snapped Sydney's back and hurled him through a stone wall. Liz slumped to the ground, weak and helpless after being drained. Sydney lay dead, covered in blood among the rubble, while the homunculus, now fully alive, walked away, leaving the ruins behind. Back in Norway, Roderick Zinko visited the secret laboratory of Kurtz and Cronin. He brought a glass box containing the living head of Hermann von Klempt suspended in fluid. "My apologies, but this just arrived from My man in South America," Zinko said. Kurtz was furious at von Klempt's presence, viewing him as a troublemaker, but Cronin defended his old comrade.
"He was my friend.
We worked together," Cronin said with a nostalgic tone. Cronin lamented that Rasputin had not recognized von Klempt's genius in Project Ragna Rok. "We failed you, Hermann. I failed you,"
he whispered sadly.
Meanwhile, in a village near St. Bartholomew's Monastery in Romania, an old villager named Stephen warned Father Nicholas about the return of the plague. Stephen urged Nicholas to leave immediately and take his cross as far away as possible.
"Plague. Maria and the children are gone."
"I sent them off to Bucharest," Stephen said, full of terror, referring to Giurescu's return. Father Nicholas tried to calm Stephen, stating that Giurescu was gone and that God had wiped away that evil. However, Stephen remained convinced he could hear Giurescu's voice in his head.
"Fool.
Pig suck."
Stephen shouted crudely before turning away in despair.
On a tree branch, a witch-bird with a forked tongue watched Nicholas intently. "Forgive me if you can," a mysterious voice whispered as the bird flew away. At Castle Giurescu, Hellboy tried to contact headquarters via radio, but the signal was abysmal. "Hellboy to Bureau. This connection isn't worth crap," he complained. He reported that he had found Giurescu wounded but still roaming the underground. Hellboy decided to take drastic measures. "I think our best bet here is to blow up this whole damn castle and bring it down on top of him." He then found a stack of wooden crates marked with swastikas, containing Nazi ammunition left over from the war. Hellboy began wiring explosives to thousands of pounds of old ammunition that turned out to be in good working order. "I've wired it, and right now. The blasting cap is armed," he reported over the radio. A steady beeping sound came from his watch as he set the countdown. "I'm giving myself an hour to get the hell out of here." As he prepared to leave the basement, his digital watch showed 60:00. Suddenly, an eerie whispering voice called his name from behind the shadows of an ancient pillar. "Hellboy." In the dark corridors of Castle Giurescu, Romania, an ethereal whisper echoed continuously, calling the name Hellboy. The horned detective stood alert, peering toward the shadows of the stone staircase and wondering, "Giurescu?" The formless voice replied coldly that the figure he sought was himself, but Hellboy challenged back with a taunt. "Got your second wind." Hellboy stood before a lion crest on the castle wall, ready to face whatever lurked in the darkness.
"You want a RE match?"
"Okay, tough guy. Come on,"
he challenged.
Suddenly, a wolf's howl pierced the silence of the night, accompanied by the shattering of a window as a crow burst inside. Hecate's voice resonated in self-exaltation. "Hail, goddess of crossroads. Witch queen, Gorgon-eyed Hecate." Hellboy, seeing his watch show 36:22, began to lose patience and grumbled. "Hecate? Damn, I don't have time for this." The manifestation of Hecate's spirit appeared in a plume of mystical smoke, praising media and prophesying the coming of the beast that would mark the end of the world. Upon seeing Hellboy, she called him by his true name, Anung Un Rama, Hellboy. Hecate accused him of being lost too long among humans, nearly losing his identity and turning his back on his own kind for the sake of being drenched in their blood. Hellboy rejected the claim and shouted, "'Cause you've got the wrong guy." Hecate continued to press him, stating that Hellboy had been at war with his own family, including the ancient spirits, witches, and vampires who were his kith and kin. She asserted that Vladimir Giurescu, once human, had now become her son. Hecate asked Hellboy to stay with her after he killed Giurescu's father. However, a disgusted Hellboy immediately turned away. "That's it.
Gotta go."
An enraged Hecate transformed into a giant serpent-bodied creature and screamed, "Stay." She launched a devastating attack, but Hellboy managed to dodge and delivered a heavy blow to the goddess's face. "Gotta go. You've got the wrong." Hellboy shouted in the heat of battle. Even though Hecate was a major mythological figure, Hellboy did not hesitate to thrash her, as he considered the goddess to have gone completal.
Why mad?
The fierce battle continued with loud thuds that shook the ruins. Hecate warned that Hellboy could not run from his destiny and must accept reality or be destroyed. She prophesied that the curtain for humanity would soon be closed, the sun would darken, and the moon would turn to blood. Hellboy, continuing the fight, answered curtly, "Gun. Natry." Hecate tried to ensnare Hellboy in eternal darkness, but Hellboy told her to shut up.
Shut up. Not gonna happen.
"'Cause you're very, very ugly. And you have a giant snake body." Hellboy mocked before plunging an iron spear straight into Hecate's chest. Ancient narrative tells how the god Thoth once cursed her until her form changed into a half-monster because of her wicked nature. With full strength, Hellboy hurled Hecate's giant body through the wall of the castle tower. "Surprise!" he shouted as the goddess fell headlong toward the stone statues below. Hecate let out a horrific scream as her body, no longer able to withstand the daylight, hit the ground with a violent impact. Hecate's body shattered and exploded into thousands of black snakes writhing among the ruins. A panting Hellboy could only mutter, "Geez." However, he soon realized a greater danger when he looked at his watch. The countdown for the explosives he had set had reached the final seconds, 0:02, 0:01.
Got him, son of a. He cursed just before death came calling.
Castle Giurescu exploded in a giant fireball that soared high into the Romanian sky. The entire ancient structure collapsed into rubble, burying all the dark secrets and the battle that had just taken
place within.
At B.P.R.D headquarters in Fairfield, Tom Manning received a report from Agent Clark in Romania. Clark reported that although his location was safe, he saw a massive explosion in Area 1 and suspected Hellboy was in action again. Manning felt frustrated because the backup plane was still held up by mechanical issues. Kate Corrigan warned anxiously, "You should send another plane, Tom. There's something bad going on over there. Real bad." On a hill overlooking the still-smoking ruins of the castle, Grigori Rasputin stood with Ilsa Horpstein. Rasputin stated that destiny was unfolding according to his plan and Giurescu would soon return strong. He assured Ilsa that this was the time for both of them to rise.
"Love chaos. Love me.
Love the dragon," Rasputin whispered, his blue eyes glowing. Suddenly, an ancient iron casket shaped like a woman emerged from the ground. Koku, the diminutive servant of Baba Yaga, arrived carrying a gift, the Maiden of Joo, the favorite bloodthirsty torture engine of Elizabeth Bathory. Koku recounted the horrific history where Bathory bathed in the blood of young girls to maintain her beauty before finally dying buried alive in the WALLS of her own castle. Rasputin asked about Baba Yaga's condition. Koku explained that the old witch had lost an eye after being shot by Hellboy years ago and was now in seclusion. Rasputin then ordered Ilsa to step inside the Iron Maiden so her soul could survive the coming storm of Ragna Rok. "You have to die a little. Like I died a little in the Never River," Rasputin said, soaring a hesitant Ilsa. With total devotion, Ilsa stepped into the iron casket, whispering, "For you, master, only for you." The iron door shut with a heavy thud, and instantly blood began to flow profusely from the gaps at the bottom of the casket. Rasputin watched the scene with satisfaction, sensing the presence of
the dragon drawing nearer.
Rasputin sent a message to Baba Yaga through Koku that the demon who wounded her would die tonight. Koku warned that there were still too many humans out there, but Rasputin calmly replied that it would not last long. Beneath a withered tree on the Romanian hill, their grand plan continued to roll forward. In the ruins of Castle Giurescu, a group of local villagers was digging through the stone debris. They found a giant red body buried beneath. "It is him. Dig him out," ordered one of the residents as they recognized the unconscious figure of Hellboy.
"Why?"
The villagers hauled Hellboy's heavy, stiff body to place it on the hood of an old car. They planned to take him to a crossroads and leave him there, according to their ancestral traditions. Meanwhile, in Norway, Karl Ruprecht Cronin reported that their apocalypse army was now complete, numbering 666, a symbolic figure that would bring plague and death to two-thirds of humanity. Tension peaked in the Nazi laboratory as Hermann von Klempt, in his jar, mocked Leopold Kurtz's project as a failure. Kurtz, losing control, screamed, "Rasputin is master. Death for you, and swung a large wrench at von Klemp's jaw, smashing it to pieces. A great commotion broke out as Cronin tried to stop Kurtz. In the chaos, Cronin accidentally plunged a scalpel into Kurtz's body. Die, monster! Kurtz shouted before finally collapsing and dying in a pool of blood. Cronin stood stunned, looking at his blood-stained hands, realizing he had just killed his own comrade. Back in Romania, Hellboy woke up bound to a wooden post at a silent crossroads. Rasputin appeared before him, mocking Hellboy as a failed prophet of a new age for choosing to side with humans. You had a glorious purpose, but when you denied it you forced me to create your replacement, Rasputin said coldly. He stated that the universe no longer had a need for a purposeless figure like Hellboy. Rasputin alluded to the suffering of Liz Sherman, who tried to cast away her power, as a warning to Hellboy. With a gaze full of hatred, the Russian sorcerer turned to leave Hellboy tightly chained under the light of the full moon. As he stepped away into the darkness, he uttered a final farewell. Goodbye. At B.P.R.D. Command Center in Fairfield, officers scrambled in front of monitor screens, trying to reach the field team. Bureau to search Team 2.
Mr. Clark? Mr. Sapien?
Come in, please. They called over the radio. In the night sky over Romania, Abe Sapien and Clark soared over the settlements using their jetpacks. Yeah, Bureau. We hear you, Clark replied firmly. They had successfully tracked the signal from Hellboy's belt, leading them to a small town rather than the castle, which now lay in ruins as a massive smoking pit. The two landed with a soft thud in the middle of a silent residential street. You'd think this kind of entrance would attract attention, Clark muttered, surprised that not a single resident had come out. Abe began to sweep the area with his tracking device, murmuring, "This way." The atmosphere was suffocating. The town felt like a ghost town. Abe looked at the doors of the houses and remarked, "Place is like a ghost town. Either everyone's gone, or afraid to come outside." On every door and window, the inhabitants had painted large red crosses as war. DS against evil. Rows of crude red crosses adorned almost every building, reinforcing the impression that they were in a vampire town. Abe kept moving, following the mechanical beeping of his tracker, which was growing faster. "This way," Abe instructed as they finally arrived in front of a grim-looking old church that in moonlight. Upon entering the church, they saw the figure of a priest in black robes standing with his back to them before the altar. "Excuse us, Father. Have you seen?" Clark began. However, Clark's sharp eyes were immediately drawn to a red object hanging from the priest's waist. It was Hellboy's agent belt, still emitting an active signal. "Hellboy's belt signal," Abe hissed. Clark realized instantly that it was a cunning trap. "We've been jerked." Outside a shattered window, a witch crow watched them with cold, yellow eyes. Clark stepped forward and touched the priest's shoulder. "Hey!" To his shock, the priest's head detached and hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. The figure was nothing more than a mannequin set up to deceive them. Before they could react, the sound of splintering would echoed as the church floor beneath them suddenly gave way. "Whoa! WHA!" They screamed as they plunged in. To the darkness below. Beneath the floor lay a pit trap filled with giant, razor-sharp wooden stakes. There was the sound of a violent impact and a sickening crack as they fell. Clark was killed instantly, his body impaled by a wooden spike that tore through his chest. Abe Sapien managed to survive, though he hung wounded among the thorns. "Clark!" Abe cried out in desperation as he saw his partner lying lifeless in a pool of underground water. In the total darkness, the spirit manifestation of Rasputin appeared supernaturally before Abe. "Abraham Sapien. Surely you remember me. The great man whose life you took," Rasputin said, referring to his physical death at Cavendish Hall. He pointed to a gaping wound in his chest. "See the wound. So horrible an injury that I wear its mark even now." Rasputin declared that his vengeance was finally being realized. He claimed Liz Sherman was broken and Hellboy was dying. "You will die as I died," he threatened before vanishing in a puff of black smoke. As Abe lay limp, he heard a ghostly voice from the distance. "Do you hear? Sunken bells are tolling for thee." Out of the caverns of Yarbisk, dark and terrible deep. The voice whispered. Meanwhile, at a crossroads near Castle Giurescu, 3 witch crows chanted a dark verse. "When shall we 3 meet again? In thunder, lightning, or in rain?" In the distance, the voice of Hecate called out in mourning, "Giurescu, my love." Hellboy remained tightly bound to a wooden post as a mounted knight emerged from the thick fog. It was Vladimir Giurescu, now risen as a spectral rider. "What is this creature before me, half-dressed in the borrowed shape of a man?" asked Hecate, her voice permeating the air. She accused Hellboy of slaughtering his own kind and defiling his human form. "Do you finally realize the futility of it?" Giurescu stared at Hellboy with glowing yellow eyes from beneath his skull-adorned officer's cap. "It is pale Hecate's immortal blood flows in these veins," he rasped. He explained that it was the goddess's will that moved his heart and brain. "And her thirst is in me also, and I'll have your blood for it." The bound Hellboy only stared back with a bored expression. "Blood? You're boring me to death." Giurescu spurred his horse and attacked with a drawn sword. "Blood for Hecate." Hellboy exerted all his strength until the wooden post he was tied to snapped with a thunderous crack. "Come on," Hellboy challenged, swinging the massive piece of wood like a club. Hecate's voice continued to chant dark prayers in the background, praising the Queen of Night who thirsted for human tea. Era. With one full-strength blow from the wooden post, Hellboy struck Giurescu and his horse. A powerful explosion of mystic energy erupted as the undead body was blown to pieces. Bones flew in every direction in a single decisive strike that ended his physical manifestation. Hellboy stood amidst the ruins of bones scattered on the ground. "That's interesting. No matter how hard you hit them, horses don't usually explode. Vampires either, for that matter," he muttered. However, Hecate's voice echoed again, stating that the son's sacrifice was for the mother's resurrection. "Hecate's blood flows through Giurescu, through him, through her. She is coming back into the world." Hellboy realized a great danger was approaching. "Through damn." Suddenly, a giant iron statue in the form of a goddess emerged from the shadows, emitting a haunting blue light. "Hellboy, you cannot escape your destiny," the entity bellowed with a booming voice. Hellboy tried to fight back by climbing the metal body, but he felt himself being sucked in by a mystic force. "It is coming for you," whispered a voice from within the statue, which now opened its mouth to reveal rows of sharp fangs. The statue then transformed into a creature resembling a giant serpent, towering into the night sky. The creature let out a deafening shriek. "Why?" Hellboy was sucked into the darkness of the creature's maw, screaming as the reality around him collapsed and he fell into the abyss of a not her dimension. Hellboy floated in a pitch-black void. "Where am I? Who are you?" he asked, confused. Voices from the darkness replied, "Behold the pit." The voice recited an ancient prophecy about the beast that would rise from the abyss to burn heaven and earth. Mysterious figures spoke his true name, Anung Un Rama Ogdru Rama Gul. Hellboy fiercely rejected the identity. "You've got the wrong guy." In another corner, Rasputin watched, prophesying that hell, heaven, and humanity would unite. The dark forces continued to press Hellboy to accept his destiny as the destroyer. "Anung Un Rama, loose the dragon, for this is the end of days," they commanded. Hellboy shouted "No," as flames began to roar around his body. They ordered him to awaken his demonic nature. "Wake your devil heart. Set upon your brow that crown of fire." Amidst the storm of energy, Hellboy's horns began to grow back to their full length, radiating immense infernal power. "Your coming of age is the death knell of man," the voices cried out enthusiastically. Hellboy continued to scream "No," as he struggled against his horrific transformation. Rasputin watched with a satisfied smile, certain that Hellboy could no longer run from his true self. Rasputin gave him two final choices: die instantly or become the harbinger of the apocalypse. "Oh yeah? Screw you. I choose door number 3. Hellboy roared in fury. In a desperate act, he grabbed his own massive horns and snapped them off with his bare hands. A loud crack echoed as he rejected his fate as the bringer of doom. Rasputin and his followers stood stunned as they watched Hellboy give birth to himself a man. Impossible. The light of dawn shone upon the Romanian forest as Hellboy returned to the real world. He stood with his horns blunted once more among the ruins. I'm gonna be sore in the morning," he groaned, clutching his head. Shortly after, Kate Corrigan appeared among the trees. "So you made it to Romania after all," Hellboy greeted her. Kate casually replied that she had come to try the paprika chicken, but Hellboy admitted he had lost track of Giurescu. They walked down the hill toward the extraction point. Hellboy reported the existence of a 16th century Iron Maiden that might still be active somewhere. Kate gave a tragic report. Clark was dead, Budwalla was dead, and Ubez's arm was broken. Liz had one of her episodes. "She's in shock,"
Kate added sadly.
A relief plane had even exploded on the runway. Hellboy stared gloomily at the horizon.
Geez.
It's a strange world. Kate replied softly. Stranger than you think. In a castle in Norway, Karl Ruprecht Kronen stared at the corpse of Leopold Kurtz lying on a laboratory table. Hermann von Klempt, in his jar, continued to mock them as failures. Suddenly, the spirit manifestation of Rasputin appeared in a great rage because they had brought von Klempt to that secret place.
Sacrilege.
You dare bring this abomination into my holy church? Rasputin screamed. A terrified Roderick Zinko tried to defend himself. Master, please. It wasn't me.
Zinko found the thing.
I was only doing what I was told. Rasputin glared at them all with a fury that promised destruction. Grigori Rasputin's fury erupted within the secret Norwegian laboratory. With hands raised toward the heavens, the sorcerer's spirit let out a thunderous roar. Silence. Of all men on earth I chose you, Roderick Zinko, to be my messenger. A trembling Zinko could only curse in terror. Damn you. Blast you. Without mercy, Rasputin delivered instant judgment. Strike you blind. Instantly, Zinko's vision went pitch black, his eyes turning a hollow white as he shrieked in agony. Ahhhh. In his sudden blindness, Zinko staggered in a panic, clawing at the air. I can't see. I can't see. Karl Ruprecht Kronen tried to warn him. Zinko, look out. But Zinko's hand, encased in a glove bearing his company's logo, accidentally caught a technical control panel. I can't see, he cried again as his finger pressed a large red button. A short electronic signal chirped just as Hermann von Klempt, inside his glass jar, and Kronen could only watch, frozen. Kronen managed a faint murmur. Don't touch that.
But it was already too well. 8.
A cataclysmic thermonuclear explosion tore through Zinko's Norwegian base, sending a giant mushroom cloud billowing high above the Arctic snows, obliterating Kronen, von Klempt, and Zinko's ambitions forever. Meanwhile, far away in Romania, Hellboy sat inside a military helicopter with Kate Corrigan as the sun climbed higher. The pilot reported over the intercom. Hellboy, sir. Message from the ground.
No sign of that Iron Maiden.
Hellboy, looking weary but calm, replied briefly. That's all right. Staring out the window at the settlements below, he thought with a sense of relief. I didn't want to see her again anyway. The helicopter flew off, leaving behind the ruins of Castle Giurescu, now leveled to the
G-round.
The story shifts to an epilogue in another mystical dimension. There stands the legendary world tree, Yggdrasil, its barren branches clawing at the grey sky. Amidst the massive, twisting roots, the spirit of Grigori Rasputin sat brooding in defeat. Suddenly, the one-eyed old crone, Baba Yaga, emerged from the shadows of the tree, leaning on her wooden staff. And behold the great Rasputin, how in defeat he comes to sit a while, with his soul, Baba Yaga mocked in a raspy voice. Rasputin looked up slowly and greeted her. Hello, Grand Mother. Baba Yaga gazed at Rasputin with a look that was both mocking and knowing. Poor Grigori. I have been watching you, all these years. You were clever to use the Nazis to bring the Hellboy creature to Earth, the witch praised. Rasputin bowed his head dejectedly. I'm sorry about your eye. Baba Yaga touched her eye patch and counted. I still have one very good one. My good eye observed you at Cavendish Hall, and saw how close you came to victory there. Surely that was your finest hour. You shook the dragon in his hole, and no other human has ever done that. She then touched upon Rasputin's failure in Romania, but this last bit of business, undone by a head in a jar. Rasputin tried to defend himself, stating that since his rebirth in the Never River, he had always followed the dragon's commands, but this final plan had been his own will. Baba Yaga laughed cynically. You're fooling yourself. Surely the lesser details of this plan were yours, but the design of the thing came out of that cold, dark place between worlds. Rasputin clenched his fist. I do not like the idea that I am only a pawn. Baba Yaga continued to corner Rasputin with the bitter truth. Like it or don't, you are what you have allowed yourself to become. Nothing, she hissed sharply. Rasputin insisted that with Baba Yaga's gift, he had succeeded in transforming Ilse Horpstein. Into what? Baba Yaga asked coldly. Rasputin fell silent for a moment before answering. I don't know. When asked whom Ilse served now, Rasputin suspected it was Baba Yaga's will, but the witch instead turned the question back on Rasputin's own purpose in life. Can't I have something for myself? Rasputin cried out in desperation. Baba Yaga reminded him that he was merely a dead man, not a god or a king. Crushed, Rasputin covered his face with his hands and asked, "Grandmother, where is your chicken leg house?"
Baba Yaga pointed.
"Look."
Rasputin remembered his childhood.
"I dreamt of it when I was a boy." In the distance, amidst the mist and the roots of Yggdrasil, stood the Izba, Baba Yaga's wooden hut perched atop a single, giant, scaly chicken leg.
Rasputin gazed at it with nostalgia.
"And it has not changed at all." Baba Yaga confirmed, "The same." She then offered sanctuary to Rasputin's weary spirit.
"Stay with us. Your journey to this place has been too long.
You're tired."
She urged Rasputin to sleep and rest from his ambitions.
Rasputin murmured, "Sleep," and Baba Yaga agreed softly. However, the fire of obsession in Rasputin's blue eyes flared up once more.
"No.
I will go on a while longer, and who knows?" He refused firmly.
"Why?"
Rasputin stood and began to walk away, heading into the deeper darkness among the roots of the world tree. Maybe a man can make himself a god," he whispered, still obsessed with a power beyond his destiny.
He said his farewells without looking back.
"Goodbye, Alibaba Yaga. Look after your good eye." Baba Yaga could only watch the back of the wretched spirit, whispering sadly, "Poor Rasputin." She replied softly, "Goodbye," as Rasputin's figure vanished completely from sight. There, beneath the eternal canopy of Yggdrasil, an ancient history came to an end while other dark designs began to take